Gracie Jiu Jitsu rocks. Welcome to the Gracie Jiu Jitsu Rocks podcast, a podcast dedicated to Gracie Jiu Jitsu and all things Gracie, including self-defense, competition, anti-bullying, women's self-defense and empowerment, nutrition, and most especially, the people involved in Gracie Jiu Jitsu. This podcast is for the average Joe. It's for anyone who practices, trains, teaches, or just loves to talk about or hear about Gracie Jiu Jitsu. We'll explore the lives of Gracie Jiu Jitsu practitioners, how they got involved in the art, and what effect it's had on their lives. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. Welcome to episode 167 of the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Rocks podcast. As always, I'm your host, Marty Josie, and thanks for listening. Today, my guest will be Nick Koumalatsos, and we'll get to that in just a moment. But before we do, let's do our quote, and that is, in my opinion, the hardest part of jiu-jitsu is walking through the door. White belts, pat yourself on the back. You're doing better than 99% of the world. And that is from Tom DeBlas. All right, Nick Koumalatsos is a husband, a father, a veteran advocate, a former reconnaissance Marine and Marine Raider, founder of the Raider Project, and a very successful entrepreneur with several businesses. He's helped countless people become the best versions of themselves through his mentoring and coaching programs. In this episode, we discuss a variety of things, but just to name a few are his troubled childhood growing up and what eventually led him to join the Marine Corps, his time in the Marine Corps and what impact it had on him, Marine Corps Special Ops, transitioning out of the Marine Corps and the challenges it had for him as well as for other veterans that he's observed and worked with, his jiu-jitsu journey, what led him to jiu-jitsu, what it's been like for him, and his very interesting experiment of doing 60 jiu-jitsu sessions in 30 days. We talk about the biggest challenges facing men today and what men can do to be the best versions of themselves. We also talk a little bit about his coaching programs, the Agoge, Modern Day Night, etc., as well as other things. So I know you're going to enjoy this episode. After the interview, make sure you stick around for the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment. And now, without further ado, let's talk to Nick. All right, I'm speaking with Nick Koumalatsos, and thank you for being here, sir.
Absolutely, Marty.
I've been following your stuff for quite a while, my friend, and big fan of it, so I'm really excited to have you on here.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, so you do a lot of great things, impact a lot of lives, Nick, and want to get into as much of that as we can. But let's just start by kind of getting to know you a little bit better. Where'd you grow up, where you're from, and what eventually led you to the Marine Corps?
So it very kind of interesting. I grew up, with my mom and my little brother, and we moved around. I'm originally from Florida. But we moved around once she separated from my father. We moved around literally every 6 months, and I keep making the joke that I think that she was running from the law. But really it was just single mom life and going from job to job and where she can get to work. And a lot of times she was working two jobs to make ends meet. And so that's kind of how we grew up. We grew up, different school every 6 months, going anywhere from Florida, Georgia, Alabama area, all the way to New Mexico and Arizona, and then back. So we were all over the place. Finally, in high school, we landed back in Florida, and I was a mess of a kid, man. By the time I was 13, I had 2 felonies, as an adult, which I didn't realize until I was already in special operations, actually. I thought that was just as a kid. And so I was getting in some trouble, mainly because, lack of father figure, lack of good role model, et cetera,
Yeah.
I was looking for that sense of purpose, looking for that tribe. And unfortunately I found it with the wrong, if you don't have a good sense of purpose or a good tribe or a good, masculine role model, there's people out there that are kind of waiting and praying on, some young man to offer that in a negative way. Right. Yeah.
So true.
And so they were, and being almost 42 now, looking back at it and everything that I do, I'm like, oh man, it was like, it's not even a trap. They're just sitting there waiting for these young kids to just land right in their lap because they're going to provide what they need. Right. Or what they think they need. Anyways, so got in trouble, a little bit of time in juvenile detention. And then when it was time to start high school, my schooling was already like so messed up because I got kicked out of a school. I missed a grade through that whole time. So I ended up going to an alternative school for the ninth grade. And they told me I had to be there for a year. They said, you got to be here for a year. And if you don't get in a fight, which I don't know how much you know about alternative schools, it's like you check into prison.
Yeah.
And everybody is trying to push your buttons. So some kids in there are like, they're just going to be in there until they go back to jail.
Right.
So they don't really have not much to lose. But I was on mission at this point. I was completely turning my life around, for what I could thought. And I was like, listen, I'm going to go and I'm going to get back into regular high school where my friends are. And, but I had to get, a certain amount of grades. I could not get in one physical altercation. So I had to just play the gray man, and they were really coming for me. And I got real good at some verbal judo.
Wow.
of talking myself out of some shit.
I guess.
And, but anyways, I beat it in, they said a year, and I said, what do I need to do it in 6 months? Basically a semester. So I knocked it out in a semester and got the heck out of there and went to high school.
Wow.
And ended up but here's the kicker. Once I got to high school, I was like, this isn't really for me. And I didn't even make it past the 10th grade. So I technically dropped out after the 10th grade.
Okay.
and got my GED that summer. And the real reason was when I was 16 years old, Marty, I was working through that summer after the 10th grade. I was working at the Bay Point Marriott in Panama City Beach, Florida, as a bellman. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'll let you finish. I'll comment on that in a second.
You know it?
Yeah, I'm from that area, Crestview, Navarre, Destin, the whole area.
No kidding.
I've lived all over that area.
I'm technically from Panama City. That's what I would say. Yeah. I enlisted from Panama City. Yeah.
I worked at Bay Point before years ago, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, so you'll know the area then. So from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., I was audio visual tech for the conference center at the Bay Point Marriott. And at 2:30 to 10 p.m., I was a bellman. Marty, at 16 years old, I was making close to $4,000 cash a week.
Wow. That's crazy.
Between the two jobs. Yeah, between the two jobs. And we're talking what was this been? 1998? So a 16, 17-year-old, making $4,000 cash a week, going to deposit in the People's First Bank and on the beach at night when I get off.
That's amazing.
Because I didn't want to carry that much cash around me on the beach in the 90s. And anyways, so when it was time to go back to school, my 11th grade year of school, I was like, this doesn't really make sense to me. I don't see how I can give up this kind of money and this lifestyle that I have to go sit in a classroom to dissect frogs and learn about photosynthesis that really doesn't serve me at all whatsoever. Yeah. And so I opted out. I didn't go back, and I'm getting my GED and started living life. And how I got into the Marine Corps was, now that I am living that life, I'm not going to high school. I I kind of just kept working that job and living that life, and was, decently comfortable. I was remodeling a house on the beach, lived by myself, had a couple of roommates here and there, but had a nice place on the beach and was just living the dream, right? At 16 years old. And then one day it hit me like a ton of bricks. I flash forward the vision of my life, like 20 years, and it was just the same. It was just the same. And I completely panicked, to be 100% honest, just completely panicked. And the reason why is because I saw myself 20 years from that point, just being the exact same, doing the same thing, working for the same place. And granted, I would have moved up and I would have gotten promoted, and, things would have changed somewhat. Right. But I could not stomach, because I guess the way that I grew up just was so much change every 6 months, which I hated when I was younger. I guess I had gotten used to that.
Right.
And when I had a little bit of stability, all of a sudden, I kind of just freaked out, and I panicked, and I was like, I don't want my life to be this monotonous thing where I work from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 6 days a week for the rest of my life. Yeah. Yes, the money was good, but I just wanted more. I wanted something more. And I said, screw them.
Where's the adventure?
Where's the adventure?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. You ever read John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, well, I didn't know about it. I mean, it wasn't written back then, but I've read it many times, later in life, because of what we do with, the Agoge and the Squire and project and everything. Yeah. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, I didn't have an adventure. I didn't have a battle. I wasn't rescuing a beauty. Right. These are three fundamental things that men need, right?
Yep.
And I didn't have those. I wouldn't have those things, so I kind of panicked and said, well, how am I going to fight a battle and go on an adventure? I'm like, well, the military is selling, like the Marine Corps in the 90s was all about that.
Yeah.
They're like, listen, we'll pay you to go on an adventure. To exotic places overseas, and all these opportunities and et cetera.
Right.
And we're like, in the commercials, they're like, I don't know if you remember, but they're battling dragons with swords.
Yes, for sure.
I'm like, this is where it's at, man. Let's get this done. And so I went in there, and I've told this story quite a bit, but I went in there, and they straight up they started talking to me. And then once, I said, listen, you guys don't have to sell me. I'm in, I'm sold. I want to do the Marine Corps because it said, at face value, it was the hardest out of all the branches. It was the longest boot camp. It was, the uniforms look sharp.
Those dress blues, man.
Yeah, man. They just carry themselves different. They're battling dragons with swords. I'm like, I'm in. You guys got me sold. They're like, all right, cool. Let's run your numbers and let's figure out where you're at. And they came back laughing me out of their office. They're like, kid, you are a high school dropout with 2 felonies on your record. There's no way in the Clinton era of our country that you're joining the military. And that was the worst thing that they could have done, because I looked at them, I was like, oh, you think so, huh? Because this is what I want to do. And if I want to do this, this is what I'm going to do. Right. I've made the decision that I'm going to do this. And they're like, not going to happen, man. And you got to have a laundry list of things that is going to keep you out of the military. And so I said, I just made it my mission. And I make the joke now that I just nuked my life. I quit those jobs. I quit one, and then because I quit one, I got fired from the other, because I didn't know that they were kind of a package deal. Moved out of my house on the beach, moved in, gave up all that money, moved in with my grandmother, and started going to college.
Wow.
When I would have been a senior. So I started going to college because the Marine Corps, they hate high school dropouts. They love college dropouts. Well, the military in general, right?
Yeah.
Military in general loves them some college dropouts. They just can't deal with a high school dropout. So I was going to go to college.
When I went in, I went to college 1 year and then joined the Army.
Yeah, that's what I did, right? They're like, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
college is not for everybody. Come on over. Anyways, I did that and then dropped out. And then I systematically, over a period of 2 years, from 17 to 19, I actually turned 19 in recruit training in Paris
Nice.
Island. But it took me almost 2 years to get in.
Wow.
Had over 100 letters of recommendation. I mean, it was a battle, but I remember you'll get a kick out of this. Going from almost $4,000 a week to my first check, working nights at a movie theater as a projectionist. I want to say it was like $179.
Oh man.
Because I was getting paid minimum wage.
Wow.
And I'm like, and I remember getting this check and being like 17 years old, going, how do people live off this?
Seriously.
Well, what am I supposed to do with $179? But granted, gas was 85 cents a gallon or something at the time. That would really blow people's mind if they remember that. But yeah, so that was the life until I joined the Marine Corps and finally got in the Marine Corps. And as life sometimes provides opportunities for perseverance through adversity, it did again, as much as my life has. And on training day 7, Marty, I broke my wrist and got dropped to the medical rehabilitation platoon for 2 months. And that's how my Marine Corps career started, right there.
Wow. That's quite a start, right?
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, I know you did some quote normal type stuff for a while, and then eventually got into more of the special ops realm. And
yeah,
we've had special ops people on the show a number of times, but mainly Army Special Forces and SEALs, but haven't had anyone in the Marine Corps Special Ops. And I don't think people in general, me included, are as up on or as versed on the Marine Corps Special Ops. So talk a little bit about that in general, and then what your situation and experience was there.
Yeah, so I hit the fleet as a Marine and immediately realized that this was not the place for me. I originally came in as an 0311. Any Marines that are listening will understand this. Nobody else it'll make sense. But because I got hurt in the 90s, believe it or not, there was not a lot of boat spaces for infantry because we were in like a drawdown, right? And I forgot it was a BRAC. Clinton did a big BRAC thing where he was shutting bases down and he was drawing the military down and equipment and all kinds of stuff. So we didn't have very many spots. When I got hurt, I lost my boat space for 0311, which I was super upset about. Hindsight, it was a blessing in disguise. Truly was, because it gave me the opportunity to do all the things I did later. But nonetheless, I lost my boat space as an 0311, ended up going to getting selected. He goes, recruit, I'm going to give you the best job of the Marine Corps. What do you do as a recruit? You just go, yes, sir. Aye, sir. And you just sign whatever they tell you to do, right? So I did, and ended up with administration, ended up with admin. And then so I checked into my unit, and I was like, wow, this is not where I belong at all. This is not the level of intensity that I like. It's not the level of work. It's not the level of Marines that I like. And nothing bad on them. It takes all kinds, but I was motivated. I was a go-getter. I wanted to go do shit, and I wanted to go play Marine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Luckily for me, I got in some trouble with my attitude because of that, and there was some good there was some good staff and COs that saw the opportunity and saw that I just needed a little something extra.
Yeah.
And because of that, they pulled me over, and I started doing some training stuff, and eventually I got an opportunity. Somebody said, hey, why don't you, actually a sergeant major who was a force recon sergeant major, Sergeant Major McAvoy, if anybody's listening that happens to know old Mac. But Sergeant Major McAvoy was a force recon guy, and he literally said, Nick, he goes, Kay, why don't you, stop being and go recon? And I was like, okay, well, what is that? And and he hooked me up with a guy named Durbin, who's retired now, obviously. But I went and took my screening, and ended up on the cover of Marine Corps Times during my screening with me coming out of the water, and which landed really, really great once I checked into my new unit and had to go through the recon indoctrination platoon. They loved that. They thought that was great press for them and for me. Cool. And they treated me very, very well. No, I'm kidding. They hazed the shit out of me, and I got punished.
What are you,
for
some
years
celebrity?
For that. Yeah, exactly. And anyways, nonetheless, I took selection for Force Recon. Went through their very, very long pipeline, and that became my life, and ended up spending time there out at 3rd Recon in Okinawa. And then 2006, 2nd Force Reconnaissance Company, my first unit that I checked into, became 2nd Marine Raider Battalion. They switched over to Marine Special Operations. That was when what was the Secretary of Defense was Rumsfeld. Piloted a program for the Marine Corps to put together a special unit to be attached to SOCOM. It was successful, and then through that test in 2006, 2nd Force Reconnaissance Company became what's now known as 2nd Raider Battalion, and they formed Marine Special Operations Command. So when I came back from overseas, my deal was, hey, I'll go do 3 years abroad as a recon. Ended up as a assistant team leader in combat, and then left as a platoon sergeant, and then came back. And the role, my agreement was that, hey, I would come back to the East Coast, go back to 2nd Force, but it was a new unit. So they said, hey, you don't have to, based off of what you've done, you don't have to go through the whole long course, but you do have to go back through selection. And initially I was like, what the hell? Like, how many times do I need to prove myself?
Right.
But nonetheless, I went through selection, and I'm super, super thankful that I did. But one, because I can say that I did. 2, I got to see the product firsthand, and what an amazing, amazing selection process that it has. And it's only gotten better over the years since I went through. But when I went through, there was even, I hate to say it, but there were other recon Marines that did not get selected. And to be honest, they were young, and they shouldn't have gotten selected. So it showed to me like the level of that it was another level, and that it deserved to be there, and we deserved to operate at the level in SOCOM. So in the last half of my career, till 2000, when I got out in 2012, was serving with Marine Special Operations Command as a Marine Raider, overseas in Afghanistan, which is funny because I guess it's not true. I did do some Asia stuff, but when the Marine Corps talks about luxurious locations, mine was Iraq and Afghanistan. Those are the
nice.
Those are the really nice vacation spots that they sent me to.
Club Med, according to the Marine Corps.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, that's great, man. And what a long and arduous process to get there. And I know you had some probably incredible and crazy experiences. Want to fast forward a little bit, not to shortchange it, but I just want to cover a lot. So I think you were in about 12 years, and I believe had some difficulty when you transitioned out. So talk a little bit about how that was for you, and what you've also observed in fellow veterans when they get out.
Absolutely. I was not, I'll be honest, Marty, I was not expecting what I went through. And I remember I had a friend who was a former teammate. He was already out, and he came and visited me, and I was on my way out the door, and he said, and I told him, he's like, oh, so you're getting out? I was like, yeah, man, I'm done. I'm just ready to be a civilian. I'm just there. I'm going to focus on my kids and, career and et cetera. And I said, man, mentally, I'm already out. I'm already there. And he just kind of laughed, and he was like, well, just be patient with yourself, and, give it time. And, and I was like, what are you talking about, dude? I'm like, I'm there mentally. I'm checked out. I'm ready to be, a dad, a husband, work on my, grow my professional career and develop myself, and et cetera. And he's like, yeah, okay, sure. And and then it just hit me. I got out and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And the reason for this is, and I'm not saying this happens today. It can at some level, but particularly in my generation or wartime generations, right? Where, I came in 2000, September 11th happened the very next year. And then that was on my life. And up until I got out, like I did my last deployment and I got out the same year I came back from Afghanistan and got out that year, shortly after I came back. And, there's some people that have done, and I'm not saying that I had like a crazy, I'm not comparing my career to anyone else's, but for my career, it was rough. Looking back on it now, we've lost, the deployment in Iraq was very rough. We lost a lot of people. And then there was just a lot of hardship and a lot of stress over the time in special operations. And as you go through that, you collect baggage, right?
Absolutely.
But the reality is, because I never slowed down. Out of 12 years, I never did a school billet. I never took a break. I stayed in one operational unit after the other. And it was kind of like by my design. Like, I did not want to take a break. I wanted to stay operationally relevant, and I wanted to do the job. I didn't want to sit on the bench. I wanted to do the job. And because I kind of strategically went from Second Force and then went to another unit overseas and then came back, they never really saw me as somebody who, they're like, oh, you just got here, you don't need a break. But the reality is, what they didn't realize, because not everybody was looking at it during that time, now they have, after us and my crew, they came up with dwell time, and they had all these different rules that you can only do so much. And they were tracking deployments a lot more because there's a lot of issues coming back.
Right.
But my time, they weren't tracking that. So I literally came off a deployment.
Wow.
Came back overseas and went right back on another workup and another deployment to Afghanistan.
That's crazy.
But because the unit saw me as a new person checking in, they're like, oh, well, he just got here, he's good. Not knowing that I've been on one deployment after the other for the last, 5 years. And so anyways, so you collect this baggage, and then you get out. And you're used to moving. Your life is moving 300 miles an hour. You're always on the next thing. And now you're moving 10 miles an hour. But all that baggage is still moving 300 miles an hour, and it smacks you right in the back of the head.
Wow.
And it did. It smacked me right back in the head, and I had to deal. I don't want to take up too much time talking about it. I wrote a book called The Excommunicated Warrior: The Seven Stages of Transition. And it outlines my transition out of the Marine Corps into civilian life and entrepreneur life, and how I became successful through that. And how that book came about, Marty, was I started seeing a trend in myself as I kind of got healthy, and then I started looking at all the guys reaching out to me and all the veterans that I was helping at the time. And I'm like, oh, this is almost like a playbook. Like there is 7 stages of transition of any, and I initially thought it was a veteran issue. I thought it was a military issue.
Yeah.
And then I realized, as I started looking at it, I'm like, this is just a human being issue. Cause I was meeting guys who did like 30 years or 29 and a half years at UPS, and then getting canned right before they got their retirement.
Wow.
Or a mom who had put her career on pause for 20 years to raise kids, and then her kids, leave the house, and they're like, deuces, mom. And she's like, well, what do I do now?
Right.
And I realized it was more about identity.
Yes.
Than it was anything else. Yeah, we collect baggage, and trauma from combat and things like that. But the brain really doesn't know the difference between combat trauma or a bad car wreck, or a cop responding to something, a shooting, or a firefighter dealing with a burning building and a bunch of people died in that. Like, the brain doesn't know the difference. It's just trauma, right?
Exactly.
And how we deal with that. So I started to realize that this transition stuff is really a life thing, right? It's a life problem. And and it was just so much bigger than the veteran community. And that's when I outlined, I mean, it happens in professional sports. It happens with, you know, people that have a career for so many years and they transition out. There's just, the laundry list goes on.
Well,
And,
you know,
and,
I think you hit it when you said it's about identity and when that has the change, but also a purpose, because those are two wrapped up a lot. And if one changes, you know, you have to retire or your circumstance changes, your identity changes, but also so many times people lose their purpose and then they feel like nothing. So I think those go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what I outlined, in the book. And where I started seeing this trend is like, we lost our identity. If Nick's not a Marine Raider, right? If Marty isn't a jiu-jitsu practitioner, then who are you? If I'm not a Marine Raider, then who am I? You know, this has been my life. It's been the way I wear clothes. It's been my schedule. It's been everything that I do, the neighborhood that I live in, all of it is wrapped up into this. Plus I have this purpose because this is my mission. Right.
Right.
And you take that away. It's like, well, dude, now who am I? And, so that's where, and I started to see this trend with, no matter who I was working with or who I was talking to, it was the same old story. It was the same old thing. And that's the reason why the people who read my book, regardless of their background, they're like, dude, I know this is weird to say and I don't want to offend you, but he's like, I felt like I was reading my own story. I was like, no, dude, that's the whole point. That's the whole point, is that we are all going through the same thing. We are all having these same issues. We're just not talking about it.
Right.
So we think that we're a unique butterfly all to ourselves, but the reality is we're not. We're just human beings going through life, and we have different chapters in our life. And as one chapter comes to an end, we sometimes kind of hold on to it and white knuckle it to death because we're afraid that maybe that chapter was the best chapter of our life. And the next chapter that I have to write is unknown.
Right.
And that's scary. Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what I tell people. I'm like, man, you got to let go of the old, the chapter, enjoy that chapter for what it was. Close the book on it though, because the next one might just be the very best one of your life. And you're not enjoying it. You're not experiencing it because you're holding on to this other one.
Yes. So important. So true. So true.
And for me, and I'm a walking representation of that. People always ask, Nick, would you go back to the military? Absolutely not. That was that chapter. That chapter's done. It was great. It was fun. It was awesome. I got to carry guns and ride motorcycles out of the back of helicopters and jump out of planes and dive in foreign countries and do all this kind of crazy stuff. Right. And I would not go back because that's what it was for what it was when it was. But my life now, oh my gosh, Marty, what a freaking wild ride. Like, I absolutely love what I do now and get to be the person that I am today.
Right, man. I love that attitude, because there's so many people who had some peak experiences, you know, say like you just described, or it could be in any field, but when they're not there, they just kind of, those glory days, right? Instead of saying, right, hey, I appreciate it, I benefited, and it shaped part of who I am, but now's a new time. I'm on now, you know? So. Yeah,
and Tony Soprano said the lowest form of communication is remember when.
Exactly, that's so true. So true.
Too many guys sit around and talk about, well, remember when, remember doing this and this and that. And it's like, dude, why don't we have a conversation on what we're doing today?
Exactly.
What are we doing tomorrow? What are we building? What are we changing?
That's right.
You know, that's the kind of stuff that we should be talking about. Ideas, big ideas.
I love it. And I know that's what fuels a lot of your mission, and we're going to move into that. But first, let's change gears and talk a little about jiu-jitsu, favorite subject. So
yeah.
What led you to that? How'd you get started? And
yeah, I got to give credit where credit's due. Two influential people in my life. I had a former teammate who I believe was a brown belt, and he was probably 50, 60 pounds lighter than me. And we'd known each other for a very long time. We ended up on the same team together and got to do a deployment to Afghanistan together. And we would go roll. And I would be, Marty, I would be out of breath. No matter what I did, no matter how strong I was stronger than him. He there's nothing I could do to him. I couldn't get my hands on him. He would just, and then I would end up in the turtle somehow, and he would just manhandle me, like complete. And I'm like, and I'm so frustrated. I'm like, I don't understand how you are doing what you're doing, and he just would laugh, and then we would roll, and I say I wish I would have kept with it, but you know how life is. I wish I should have started right then when the first time we ever started training together. I should have started right then.
Right.
But deployments change, and everybody goes
time,
back,
right?
and it wasn't time. And so my brother, my wife is a Midwest family, so they're all from the Midwest. So my brother-in-law grew up with Michael Chandler and Ben Askren, and her cousin was this, Missouri, was it MU, whatever, Missouri State, whatever, state champion. So they grew up in this big wrestling thing, and her brother-in-law's transition as he got older, transitioned to jiu-jitsu. And, he constantly was like, Nick, you need to do it. And, I'm busy building my businesses and doing all the things that I'm doing. Still very physical with everything that I do, rock climbing, jumping out of planes, climbing mountains and all kinds of crazy stuff. And, to be honest, Marty, I had built a very tight circle. I think the winner's circle is very small. You should audit your circle. If you're hanging out with losers, then you're going to be a loser. You hang out with millionaires, you're going to be a millionaire. It's just the way that it works, right? So I had done that. I had built my little ecosystem. I'd become decently, pretty successful. And there wasn't much unknown for me. Okay. So like, I knew exactly how my day was going to go. My schedule is so regimented. Like there's not a lot of guesswork. There's not a lot of there's challenge, but we're so good at what we do. We've developed ourselves so well that I can put, like for the last year, right? I put a target on the board, December 2022. I put a target on a ridiculous target for our businesses. I mean, absolutely ridiculous target. It was going to be 43% growth in our 5th year of business. I put the target on the board, built out the phase lines, executed the plan when we had a 56% growth in our 5th year of business.
Wow.
And we're going to double. And so, yeah, was it stressful? Was it hard? Sure. But to be honest, it wasn't that challenging because I knew what to do. I knew what moves to make to get the outcome that I needed. Right.
Right.
So I felt like I was in this place in my life where I was kind of becoming like a master at what I was doing. And I wanted something that was going to challenge me. I needed something where I wasn't the boss. I needed something that was going to put me outside of my comfort zone again. Something I wasn't good at, right? That was going to make me uncomfortable. And my brother-in-law was just hammering me like, you got to go to jiu-jitsu class. You got to go try this. And I'm like, okay, finally. So I told my wife, I said, hey, I'm going to do it. And she's like, yes, finally. And so I went, and I remember I went in a night, and I don't know if your listeners are like new jiu-jitsu people or if they're all old-timers, but
yeah,
full range. So this is here I am, Marty. I think I'm 38 years old, successful guy walking into a jiu-jitsu gym at night, and they're all in there rolling. And the guy, one of the black, he's a black belt now. He's like, yeah, come in. We'll start class at 5:45. I'm like, do I need anything? He's like, no, just show up, wear this, and we'll get you a gi and we'll let you try it out. It's like, don't need to pay anything. He's like, no, first time, you have a whole week for free. And I'm like, this is weird. Okay, cool. So, and I went, and 5:45, while I'm sitting outside in my truck, and I have this same feeling of being like 8 years old and some kid telling me he's going to kick my ass in the parking lot at 3 p.m.
Oh man, that's great.
And I'm like, do I really want to do this? Like, I don't know. There's no friends in there. I don't know anybody, more likely they know me. Like there's a hand that guarantee that they're going to know me because of my social media presence and what I do and things in the area, you know? And I'm like, do I really want to put myself through this? And I'm literally, you know, like nervous at 38 years old, a special operations Marine, combat vetted, blah, 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 all the bullshit. Right. And I'm like, I don't know if I want to step in here. Anyways, of course I did. And, got my ass beat. I mean, to the point to where, I mean, granted I was fighting back, but to the point to where I'm like, do these guys have something against me? I'm like, do they know me and they have something? Yeah, am I a target? What's going on here? And then come to find out later down the road, they were like, oh, absolutely not. We were just welcoming you to jiu-jitsu. And those guys that were the hardest on me, legitimately, I've thanked them for years, because the guys that were hardest on me that first week when I showed up, there was two particularly, I credit so much to my growth in jiu-jitsu. Like they've helped me so much over the years.
Do you want to name them?
One of them Stratton, the other guy's Ben, who works. They're just absolutely great guys, and they hammered the shit out of me, and they still do. Maybe not, they can't do it quite as what they used to do, but nonetheless, it was a beautiful thing. And when I started doing it, I was like, oh, it was almost like a break from me being responsible for being a leader, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
It gave me, and it still does, it gives me the opportunity to go in and truly be a student of life.
That's great.
And to focus on this one thing. And you guys, I mean, anybody that does jiu-jitsu knows, like, you can have all this bullshit going on in life. Guess what you're not thinking about when you're rolling?
That's right. That's right.
All that bullshit. Because as soon as you do, it's over for you, right? You have to be paid. You have to be present. You have to be paying attention. And it's really helped me, because my brain is focused on my 3 different businesses and my 50-something employees and the millions of dollars of funding that we're balancing and all this kind of stuff. It's really nice for me to go there, 4 times a week and to put all that to bed, be a student again, and not think about any of it for a period of time.
Oh, it's such a great outlet for you, it sounds like, and I'm really glad you found that. And it also, it got you out of your comfort zone like you wanted, right? And it sounds like, with the kind of person you are, your personality, if it had been too easy that first time, you might not have wanted to stay with it, because you like a bit of a challenge, and that hardness that they brought kind of. Another thing I wanted to talk about a little bit, and people can watch the video you have of it for the full effect, but you decided to do an experiment, 60 sessions in 30 days. I can't even imagine that, but everybody go definitely check that out. But if you would speak just a little bit about how that was and what you gained from that.
Yeah, so I watched it. To give credit where credit's due, there was a purple belt. It was a purple belt out in the UK, and he attempted it. Now, granted, he was older. He was older than me. I think he was in his 50s when he tried it, but he made it to like high 40s, maybe 50 before he tapped out. And I was like, you know what? I was like, I can do that. I said, but, and I'm, intelligent enough, say a brown belt or a black belt or even a purple belt doing 60 sessions in 30 days. Is going to have a very different effect versus a white belt, because they're more efficient. They don't have to work as hard, right? Yeah. They know how to and then now too, especially in the gi, right? Like I can lock somebody, white belt comes after me, losing his mind. I just lock them down, right? You just grab them and lock them down, and, get them to calm down. But I knew that, and I actually wore heart rate monitors, and I would roll with other people who were upper belts, and they would burn like a quarter of the calories that I was burning.
Interesting.
So that's why
I'm not surprised, but I think it's cool that you were measuring that. Yeah, for sure.
So I wanted to see. I was like, okay, so like this has been done, right, or close to been done by other people, but has it ever been done as a white belt? Can a white belt do 30 sessions or 60 sessions in 30 days? And so I jumped on it, and I'll tell you what, man, it was definitely to date one of the harder challenges that I've put myself through. And my coach even said, he goes, Nick, you're going to hit a spot. You're going to hit a dark spot. And it was about 2 weeks in. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed and going, man, I don't know if I can go to class. I don't know if I can do this. Like, I'm destroyed.
Yeah.
Within 1 week, if you look at the videos, like I have 2 black eyes. My eyes are sunken in. Like I looked like I had cancer. Like it was pretty rough. But the one thing that I tell people in my coaching group too, the Agoge and our tribe that we have there, when you're just starting out, you pre-pack your bag the night before. Right. So I get back from class. I had to buy a bunch of gis, right? Because obviously I'm rotating, typically, depending on the day, typically 2 gis a day. So I would throw one in the washer, and then I would pack my bag for the next night, because I would do a night class and a morning class. So the night class wouldn't even get done till like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I had to be up at 5 for a 5:45 class.
Wow.
So I would pack my bag the night before and have it by the door. So all I had to do was just wake up and grab my bag. And if I did not do that, I don't think that I would have, if I didn't use that method, I would not have completed it, because there was nothing I needed to do. I just needed to grab my bag and walk out the door. So I reduced the amount of decision-making process that I had.
Well, plus you made a mental commitment by going ahead and packing it, right? You're saying I'm going to do this, so that's great.
I made a promise to myself, so I was going to keep it. And so anyways, so I made it through about the 3-week mark. I was kind of like on autopilot, like not doing so hot, but I was like, oh, this is what I do now. I wake up, I go to Jiu Jitsu, I take a nap in the day, and then work all day, and then go at night, and then I repeat the process until it's forever. And anyway, so we got it done. I think I got a stripe or a couple of stripes at the end of that thing.
Yeah, that was very cool.
But I really didn't. In one of the other black belts that I was working with on Tuesdays and Thursdays, he said, honestly, you're not even gonna comprehend what all the information that you got, because it's so much information for probably 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I took a vacation. I took a week-long vacation right after that, and then I came back and then kind of recovered, and then came back and went to class. And it was like all this stuff from that month had kicked in.
That's
cool. Just so much. It's so much data on your brain that your brain kind of really needs to like slow down and let it catch up.
Process, yeah.
And it really helped me. I would say that was probably one of the biggest things, because I got my blue belt like a year and I don't know, 7-8 months maybe.
Yeah.
And I would say that it's mat time, right?
It is mat time.
It's time on the mat.
You got it. You got it.
I mean, some people don't do 60 sessions in a year.
That's very true. It's very true. And thank God for a supportive wife to be able to complete that, I'm sure. So.
Oh yeah.
So let's move on, Nick. I want to ask you about. So if you would, what do you think is one of the biggest challenges facing men today, and what do they need to know or do to be the very best they can, and how do your various coaching and mentor programs help with that?
The biggest thing that they're facing today is there is a society in the entire world, in the first world countries, that has a war against men. And at this point, you can't. I don't even think you can deny it. And if anybody denies it, they're just being completely ignorant.
I agree.
There has been for decades a very thought out plan to demasculate men, to ruin the family unit, and to make them fat, sick, and dependent. And Marty, the reason why that I say that, and it's been directly focused at men, is because, and I've talked about this a lot. When we invaded Iraq, were we worried about the elderly? No. Were we worried about the children or the women? No. We're worried about what? Capable military-age males. If you and I wanted to go invade Canada, which probably wouldn't be that very difficult, right? But nonetheless, sorry for all my Canadian friends. Would we be worried about the women, children, or elderly? No. We would be the only threat to us invading that country and taking it over and being complete control of the direction of that country would be capable men. So if I wanted to take over this country and I wanted to let my agenda be the agenda, and I don't want to fire a shot over it, then what do I need to do? I need to take a man and make him obsolete so that he doesn't put up a fight against me. That's just asymmetrical warfare.
Right.
And if you look at the history of our country, that's exactly what they've done.
Yes.
They've put a message in place, and they've slowly eroded away right under our nose at our power. Because if you took men that operate with me in the Agoge, the guys that have graduated the project, the guys that I deal with, the guys that are in my circle, and if that was the norm for America, for instance, when COVID happened and they tried to shut everybody's business down, and I'm not saying that COVID's not real. I'm not saying any of that. All I'm saying is the what is it called? The way it was handled, the kind of the dystopian, dictatorship of the way things came down. I mean, my gym got raided. Like, I dealt with all of it. The breaking of constitutional laws and freedoms. If men were the guys that I run with, if that was the norm, there's no way that they would have been able to pull off what they pulled off, because men would have looked at their communities and go, no, this isn't in best interest of our families, our children, and our businesses and our communities. So no, you're not going to do that. And we're going to have a say on how this goes. You're not going to dictate shit. And it would have been a very different outcome.
Yes.
But you had to have that collectively. And if they tried to play that same thing in, say, the 50s or the 40s, it would not have gone down the same way. It would not have gone down the same way, because we had more responsibility.
Yes.
We took more personal responsibility for ourselves, and we took more personal responsibility for our families.
And we had role models like John Wayne instead of what we have today.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I'm not painting a picture saying all these men are perfect.
Right.
I'm not saying that. All right. We all have our hand ups. We all have our things, but they weren't victims. They weren't victims, and personal responsibility was just the way of the world.
Exactly.
And how you treated others and how you spoke to others there was a standard, and we've lost that.
Yes.
And we've lost it because we've allowed the powers that be, the opposition, to put this in play. And if you really look at, like, there's a great book by Napoleon Hill called Outwitting the Devil.
Mm-hmm.
Highly suggest getting the Audible version of that and listening to that. And you will be absolutely shocked at how more true it is today than when he wrote it 100 years ago.
Yeah. First of all, I love books that stand the test of time like that. But yeah, I think so many men today, because of influences on them, are scared to be men. And I don't mean overly macho and not caring or sensitive, but very balanced men. No. But they can have a true, masculine energy and leadership, just like the book you mentioned earlier. I forgot the name. Wild at Heart. Yeah,
Wild at Heart.
Yeah, just knowing what a real man is and what it means to be a real man, and being okay to do that, and taking ownership of that.
Mm-hmm. And that's become my mission, when after that, I had a Venezuelan, immigrant came on my podcast. He's a black belt down in Wilmington. He was like, what they did was, and you don't even realize what they did, but he's like, they radicalized you. He's like, because you were just doing your life, you were just doing your own thing, living your businesses, going to jiu-jitsu, basically I did my time in the military. When I got out, I was ready to be, just a dude and doing my stuff. And he said, because it's like kind of like the Rambo saying, first blood, right? Because they poked the bear, they drew first blood, and now it became your mission. And that's what happened. I mean, when my gym got raided and I saw how my constitutional rights and freedoms were violated, and more so how the employees and the second and third order effects of what that was happening to our area and what was happening to the country, I was like, it just woke me up. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to be a bystander anymore. I am going to dictate the moves for my community, my family, and my employees. And not only that, we were already coaching in the Agoge, and we had just went online the month that we had to shut down.
Wow.
And it wasn't planned that way. It just happened that way. And then we just took it to the next level, and we created this group of guys that know they're not living up to where they could be, whether it's weight, their fitness, their relationship, their money, their mindset, whatever it is. But they just know that they need something more. They need to be held accountable. And I'll honestly say, Marty, that we are the best. There's not one coaching group that brings to the table what we bring to the table and the people that we bring to the table in this country.
Wow.
There's not one, maybe in the world. And it's kind of crazy to say that, hey, we're the best in the world, but we really are.
That's amazing.
There's nobody that offers everything that we offer, because we do the fitness, nutrition, the mentorship, the mindset, the business, the family, all of it.
Right.
All of it in the Agoge. And because we realized that initially we were just doing fitness and nutrition, and then guys weren't hitting their marks. I'm like, what is your problem, man? And we realized that the issue wasn't their nutrition and fitness. The issue was the space between their ears.
Mm-hmm.
And so we went to go fix that. And once we started to fix that, and it kind of grew life of its own. And, now we do there's 4 different mentorship calls going a week. Some that I'm not even involved in. And it just took off.
Awesome.
And that's what I'm doing. I mean, my purpose is to build this, I feel like I'm building an army of men who want to take their families back and take their vote back, and how the direction of this country goes. They want to stand up and have a say, and we're providing that.
I think that's one of the most important and needed things out there today. So hats off for you to you for doing that, running that, and impacting so many lives. You also have a program, and you can give us just a quick bit about the Modern Day Night.
Yeah. So the project, it's a 75-hour experience for men. Many, and what's crazy is men. We get a lot of slack for it because, people are like, well, just join the military. Well, believe it or not, a lot of these guys, I actually hired the honor. I've hired 2 honor grads from the project. One's a coach for the Agoge, but he was a former Ranger, and he went through. And there's a podcast on my thing telling his story of why after everything he's done in his life, why he went through the project. But it's a test for men. I would say it's that time when you need to recenter yourself, and you let yourself fall by the wayside, be it maybe mentally or physically, or you just got some bad habits that the opposition has been put in front of you slowly, and you've kind of fell into that trap or that cycle. The project pulls you out of that, and it recenters you into who you are, what your core values are, and the kind of man that you want to be. And then not only that, you join a brotherhood. Join a brotherhood of men like the ones that I'm working with. And that kind of goes back to what I was saying is, we're building an army. And even furthermore than that, was the Squire program, that we run. And it's ran in 4 different locations right now, all over the United States. And we've got one coming up in April. The next project is in March. But the Squire program is a father and son experience, and it's really a rite of passage for a young man. Wow. From the ages of 11 to 17. And it's a 1-day event, it's a 15-hour event, and if I could do one Squire a month, I would, because in 15 hours, you watch a cub turn into a lion. And it's amazing to watch these timid young men who feel like they don't have a voice. They're scared to say something. They've been so suppressed for so long, turn into leaders in 15 hours, where they can stand up, they put their shoulders back, and they have this confidence that they leave with this confidence about being a man and what it means to be a man that they didn't have 15 hours ago.
Wow. That's amazing.
It's the most amazing experience. I wish I could just do those once a month.
Yeah, that's got to be so gratifying to facilitate that and see it and watch that progress. And
I was working out in the gym today, and my videographer, who's the last auto grad that I hired for the project, he's like, dude, I get more out of the Squire program than anything, even just like watching and attending. He's like, I cry every time.
Wow.
He's like, watching those kids in the ice bath and overcome their confidence or lack of confidence, and watch them just transition in 15 hours. He goes, it makes me emotional every time. That's the same. I like every Squire program. I probably cry like 4 or 5 times just watching the relationship between the father and the son, and that bond be created even stronger. It's quite an emotional day. Yeah.
What are the age groups? And I'm sorry if I missed that. The age groups of the kids usually.
11 to 17.
Okay.
11 to 17. Yeah.
Wow, man. I wish I would have done that with my my son, who's 19 now, over at school in Wilmington. But what a great thing for bonding, for empowerment, for just setting the stage for the rest of your life, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and we see these young men leave the Squire program. We've got young men, like 16-year-olds that have started their own podcast, that have started their own businesses, who have gotten in phenomenal shape. I mean, we see them a year later after one day, Marty, one day at the Squire program. I see them a year later, and they didn't even look like the same person.
Wow, man.
They put on muscle. They're fit. They carry themselves differently. Yeah, it's wild. Absolutely wild.
Excellent. And I'll definitely put or you can say now, but I'll also put a link in the show notes how people can get more information about your various programs. But you can go ahead and give your website or contact now if you would like.
Yeah, it's my name. It's nickkoumalatsos.com. And when you go to that website, there's a block for every single thing that I'm talking about in there. So we made it super simple for everybody just to find what they're looking for and go from there.
Excellent. And you also have written a number of books. I'll put that info on the show notes as well. People can check those out. Mm-hmm. And where do you train jiu-jitsu? I meant to ask you just so we'll have a little shout for them.
So Crest Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we're actually under in Hampstead, North Carolina. We're actually under Tom DeBlas. So I just got back from training with him in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And he's a good friend of mine as well. Absolute savage. If he hasn't been on your podcast,
he has. Yeah, he's amazing.
I saw that Matt was on there.
Yep.
I got a couple good friends. Wallstrom's a good dude from Epic Roll.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so we're in the Tom DeBlas circle.
Awesome.
It's probably why they like hammered me when I first showed up. It's a little bit more of an intense. But we have a great family and a great environment, great kids program. All the instructors are just amazing at Crest, and it's become our family's life. It really has.
Man, it's great. Well, listen, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to let us get to know more about you and your life, and you've touched so many lives, you've impacted so many lives, and just my hat's off to you, and just keep doing what you're doing, brother.
I appreciate it, Marty. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, man. Long, healthy, happy life, bro, my friend. All right. Really enjoyed that conversation with Nick. What a fascinating guy he is. There is so much more I would love to have covered with Nick, but perhaps we can have him on again in the future. All right, have you heard about New Hope Regeneration? New Hope Regeneration is a company that offers regenerative and stem cell therapies. I personally have had this therapy done and can attest to how incredible it is. One of the best things I've ever done for my health and longevity. So if you're not quite the person you were 10 years ago, or if you're suffering from any kind of physical degeneration or breakdown, go ahead and check out newhoperegeneration.com/Marty, and you'll be able to find out more information as well as schedule a free consult about your specific needs and goals. All right, this episode is brought to you by Breathing for BJJ. And Breathing for BJJ is a 31-day online video program that I spent 2 years in developing, and it's designed to transform your jiu-jitsu experience. You know, there's nothing more important than your breathing. It makes a profound difference in your jiu-jitsu experience. Optimizing your breathing takes your jiu-jitsu experience to a whole new level and has a huge impact on your performance. Learning to regulate your breathing can completely transform your jiu-jitsu experience. Being able to slow your breathing down when you need to, create energy when needed, breathe when in uncomfortable positions and situations, and to find the calm within the chaos are skills you need to master to create and achieve the optimal jiu-jitsu experience. This program uses a biomechanical approach to actually target and strengthen your specific breathing muscles, creating efficiency and effectiveness in your functional capacity to breathe. It's time to make breathing the foundation of your BJJ. And you can find out more at www.breathingforbjj.com. Next up is the Make a Difference, Make an Impact segment.
They say heavy is the head that wears the crown. That with the ability to influence comes a burden, a worry not felt by the masses. That power, like anything, has its costs. And I don't disagree. But I can't help wondering what value lies in the alternative. See, today is my empire. Each action my subject. I rule this kingdom with an iron fist because it is mine. Because I will not let my life be dictated by foreign aggressors. I am king, not because of the crown on my head, but because of the life that I lead. Because when you govern your own beliefs and expectations, you bow to no man. My thoughts are loyal. My decisions comprise the greatest army this world has ever seen. And unless I say otherwise, it will conquer to the ends of the earth. My world is simple. Rule or be ruled. Do or wish, act or hope. It's always easier to be the subject, to be directed, to take orders, to complain about the decisions made up the chain of command. But easy will never change your life, will it? Heavy is the head that wears the crown, because to have control is to take on risk. It's dangerous, it's vulnerable. But you'd be hard-pressed to find another soul who didn't want to be king or queen, who didn't envy the crown. It wasn't a matter of desire, it was a matter of courage. And when it came down to it, when things gravitated outside of their comfort zone, they simply cowered. Everyone has a crown at their feet. Everyone. The question is, will you pick it up? No decision is more consequential than the decision to take control. To rule over your life. The universe does not control you, it empowers you. Too many people complain about being locked inside a room of limitation when they have a key in one hand and a map in the other. No one can make you take the first step. No one can push you out the door. Potential is never guaranteed to materialize. Royalty must decide to rule. To differentiate themselves from everything else, from the excuses, the difficulty, and the odds. Reign over your life. Conquer the unconquerable. Be brave enough to wear that crown. The possibilities always outweigh the risk.
And that's going to do it for this edition of the show. As always, I thank you for listening. Hope you're enjoying the show. Please like and follow us on social media and help us spread the word by reposting our posts and telling others about the show. You can leave comments on the website at www.graciejiu-jitsurocks.com. You can also go to iTunes and leave comments as well as rate the show, and we would appreciate a 5-star rating, which helps us with our standing in iTunes. You can also leave comments on our YouTube channel. If you have suggestions for the show, please don't hesitate to give those. We always like feedback and suggestions. Okay, that's going to do it. So until next time, this is Marty Josie, and I'll see you on the mat.